Look what I get to sit between. So first I'm going to have these two lovely gentlemen introduce themselves, then I'll introduce you. No questions yet here. So,
Could you talk louder?
is there
You have a mic.
So we will endeavor to speak loudly.
Thank you.
I don't think these guys will have a problem. Not me so much.
I imagine you guys can hear me.
What?
Sorry, what? So, no, I know you can.
So introductions, please. Introductions. We'll start with Brad.
So I write primarily hard science fiction, published a number of stories in Analog magazine and other magazines, anthologies, etc. I publish with Maine, which Larry also does. I have a military career on the side, so I do military science fiction as well. Been nominated for a few awards, and that's me.
I'm Larry Correia. I written a bunch of books. I think I'm on number 19 is coming out, and I love this panel specifically. I get stuck on this a lot because I love business. I got a business background before I was a writer, so I'm one of those merciless mercenary kind of guys. But we'll give you the straight scoop.
And I am Jonna Hayden. This phrase I say is not something you hear very often, but I am a self-employed costume designer and clothing historian with retirement and health insurance.
Notice they don't care about us, but
Yeah.
I hear you.
Not an easy job.
Yeah, you guys just write books and crap.
Yeah. Well, the point is too, I'm also creative, who's making a living at being a creative, making a living a comfortable one. So first up, I'm going to ask these guys about the early years, what it was like in the early years when they were beginning to start out, and what their plan was as they were starting, and have things progressed in the way they expected them to.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so it's probably helpful to look at this panel as guy who's trying, guy who's doing. For me, my genesis as an author was it was long. It took about 17 years between the time I was a teenager wanting to be published to arriving at entry-level publishing. Fortunately, I got to be friends with Larry and many, many people who helped me along the way. Like I said, I've done a lot of short fiction, still relatively new to doing novels with Bain. So in a lot of ways, I've been trying to take Larry's advice and Kevin J. Anderson's advice and Mike Resnick's advice. These are men that have really succeeded very, very well in the field. I am not good at implementing, obviously. For me, it comes down to balancing jobs with an S on the end. I think, honest to goodness, if you're going to make a plan as a creative person, you have to be the kind of person who can try to really laser focus in on that and push away distractions. That's probably the one thing that I've been really bad about. I'm letting my careers, with an S, compete with each other. And I think one thing you can do when you're thinking about, okay, I want to do this for real, is how you can eliminate distractions, eliminate things that are going to compete for your time.
Beginnings for you.
Beginnings for me, I actually started out self-published. I had my own business at the time. I owned a gun store. And I self-published my first novel, Monster Hunter, and it actually did really good. I won't we stick to the business, we'll keep going. One of the things I had going for me is I had a business background. I understood marketing, I understood accounting, I understood you have to pay taxes, which was a shocker to a lot of you guys. I was an accountant, and then after this, as I was launching my career, the first 5 years of my writing career, I was the finance manager for a defense contractor. So I kind of had a big brain number crunchy job. And I did spreadsheets for the military all day, basically, and got audited by 1,000 government agencies. So during all this, though, my business background helped me a lot. So the creative side, we won't spend a lot of time on that, I don't think, but the creative side is awesome. But it's really hard for a lot of creative people to make that jump into the business side. So while I was doing this, I treated it like a business. And I think one of the reasons I'm successful now, and I'm doing pretty good now, is that in those early years, I ran it like a business. I structured it like a business. I thought of it as a terms of, I am the producer of a product. I will bring the product to my market, and they will give me money for it. And then I will use that money to live in a house and buy food. Okay? So when you're starting out, the creative side of things is very important, but make sure you keep that balance. Make sure you're doing this as a job, and make sure you're doing all the things you would do like if you were running any other small business. That's exactly what you're doing here. As a writer, as a creative, you are the owner of a small business. You are the CEO and the finance department and the janitor, okay? So you got to get your stuff together.
I would add to that, as a creative, I started the same way. I didn't see it as, yeah, I love what I do, but I also understood that if I was going to do it as a lifetime thing, I had to think of it as a job I did every day. And so many people who are creatives go, yeah, but if I'm doing it for money, it's like, not really all that. And it's like, okay, just start flipping burgers because that's where you're going to be. To be honest, that's how it is. So you have to think about it as how do you learn to get yourself into the flow of what you need to do to produce every single day, and how do you manage all the other things, which is the next thing we're going to wander into, is balance. Balance is really important. So you have very definite balance issues going on in your life right now, which I think have a good example for the audience here.
So again, I've got two jobs. I've got my civilian career, which is a full-time occupation. I've got a family. I've got my military career, which is often way more than just part-time. And somehow, a few years ago, I got myself into this crazy fiction career. Again, the thing I can try to advise people on is try as hard as you can to prioritize. That's, again, something that I have struggled with, and you're going to struggle with it. You know, I don't think anybody gets it right out of the box. I've been fortunate that I've had people like Larry who live geographically close to me, who's been a great advisor and a great example, because he's been very, very laser focused on his fiction and production. That's probably the big P word that should go out to everybody, is produce, produce, produce. Because production, even more than, so let's say you could be the most talented author in this whole building, literally. But if you're not producing, you have nothing to show people. And if you're not producing, you have nothing to put on the market every 6 months, every 2 months, you know, whatever. Because the market is a little bit amnesiac. I mean, people forget you fast. It moves quickly. So you got to always kind of try to have some new stuff out there that people can look at and read, and they'll remember your name, and they'll get interested in you, and they'll become invested in you as a fan. You know, Larry has capitalized on that almost perfectly, in my opinion, with his different series, and especially the Monster Hunter books, because he had something that fans went, oh, well, this is really cool. And he's just produced like clockwork. If you can do that, you can have a career, I think.
Yeah, there's only a handful of people I can think of in genre fiction that do one book or two books and then blow up huge. Or they take several years between, like they take 5 years between books, or 6 years between books. There's really only a few of us that do that. If you can luck into a career like that, it's basically like, statistics like winning the lottery. You're more likely to get eaten by a shark on land than you are to wind up like Captain Crawford, okay? So here's the thing, for most of us, how it works, most of us have day jobs, right? I mean, raise your hand if you still got your day job. Okay, raise your hand if you want to quit your day job. Okay, there you go. All right, so here's the thing. I don't have a day job anymore for 5 years. It's been awesome. And it makes life a lot easier as a professional writer because I can focus. But while you still have your day job, the key to quitting your day job is once you get that production. You get a book out there. Very few of us make enough money off our first book to quit our job. You get an advance if you go trade pub, or if you go indie, you're going to get some money. But what's going to happen is what you live off of is what we call backlist. You guys all know what backlist means? Backlist is your old books that continue selling. And so really, most of us don't quit our day jobs until we have about 5 books out with plans for more. Because you live off your backlist. Now, when you're traditionally published with a big publishing house, you're getting a check basically every 6 months. So even, I do pretty good, but I still technically live paycheck to paycheck. It's just 6 months between paychecks. But how this is going to work is I get a bunch of money for whatever my new book is that I turned in. If I have a contract, I get an advance. So I get money when I sign a contract. I get more money when I turn the book in. I get money when the book comes out. But then once that earns out against that royalty, I start getting every 6 months paid a percentage of the cover price per unit. And so the key is, that money up front is nice, but what you live off of is when you got 4 books that are out there that are still selling, you get a little bit of money for each one. Well, next year you got 5 books out, you get a little bit of money for each one. And then when you get to where you have 18 books on your backlist, you get a little money for each one. but that adds up fast. And so what happens though, and Brad mentioned this, the audience has amnesia. And also stores, when they restock their shelves, are going to give you so much shelf space based upon how you sell them. And if you don't have new books coming out, your shelf space will dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, and then they'll restock you. Okay? And the same, and internet's a little bit different, online sales, but it's the same thing. You want to get back refreshed in their memory. It's a common thing in business is that people don't buy a product unless they're reminded of it. That's why we all know Coca-Cola, we all know McDonald's, but you notice we see a McDonald's and a Coke ad every time you turn on TV, right? It's because they're refreshing your memory. Books are the same way. If I turn a book out a couple times a year, that gets my name out there again, refreshes people's memory. My backlist keeps getting purchased by new people or repurchased by old people. And so what happens is it just keeps growing. And so once you get those 4 or 5 books in backlist, more plans for, that's when you can seriously start thinking about quitting that day job.
We have a similar thing in costume design called show design fees. I mean, the more shows you design, every time it goes up on a stage, you get a check. It's really nice. So I don't get them every 6 months. I get them about every 2 to 3 to 4 to 6 weeks. So it's kind of cool. They just go in the bank. It's a good thing, good way to go.
One of the things I always joke about is all authors, no matter how artistic you are, it should in their mission statement put the words "get paid." Okay, capital letters, get paid.
Yeah, you'll hear, I've a lot of my short fiction and stuff, again, has been up for awards and whatnot. There's that side of the literary community, and I don't think you get it so much here at LTUE. I think LTUE is actually pretty ecumenical, but there is that side of the literary community that drives this idea that somehow, if you're a real storyteller, if you're a real artist, that money doesn't matter, and actually making money is bad.
You should suffer for your art.
Is it right? You got to suffer. You got to live in a garret with a bulb dangling by a wire, and you got to go crazy and eat, raw ramen noodles, and there's that idea from the artiste side. I would like to impress upon you the idea that you can be as much of an artist as you want, but definitely you have to be business minded about how you approach this. To include those of you that are married, who's married, right? Aha, I thought so. To
My wife's waving at me.
getting your spouse on board with this, because honest to goodness, your spouse, I've seen this with different authors, your spouse can either be your best business partner ever, or they can be your worst enemy, depending on how you get them involved. So really, when you decide you're going to do this, man, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this work, you need to make sure that your spouse is on board with it, and you both know what's going on, and you both know what to expect.
Budgeting and planning.
Budgeting and planning.
On this one?
Go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
go ahead,
oh.
because mine's a little bit different.
Okay, so in budgeting and planning, when you still have your day job, it's awesome. The best thing about the day job is, you have money coming in reliably. You got a, 2 weeks, you got a paycheck like everybody else. It's awesome. The problem with being a writer is the money is sporadic, and it's going to be based entirely upon what you sell. If you don't sell, you don't get paid. The advance money is awesome, but advance money runs out real quick, and then you need that backlist is what you're going to live off of. So you got a budget, and the less you're making, the harder this gets. And really, the key to when you decide when to quit the day job is what it came down to me, is look at how much you're making from your day job, look at how much you're making off your books, and then think, if I was to spend 40 hours a week, 40 productive hours a week that I'm spending my day job writing books, how much money would I have versus my day job? And when you can look at those two side by side, and when you're actually losing money by going to work instead of writing books, that's when you need to switch. That's when you really need to switch. If you jump ship a little early, I know some writers that have done that, that's fine, because it's kind of like when Cortez burned his ships. You're committed. Because it's like, these books had better sell. And I actually didn't quit my day job until I think I was 7 books, because I actually really liked my day job. I had a wonderful job. I worked with wonderful people, and we had we did something that I thought was great. It was an accountant's dream job. But even then, I got to the point where I had to look at it and it's like, well, I'm going to work, I'm losing money. I need to be home writing books. So when you get to that point, then you have a plan. You know, it's like, I expect to make approximately this much off of royalties. I know I'm going to make this much off of turn-ins. I know I'm going to make this much off of releases. That's great. But how much do I think I'm going to make off of that, and then budget accordingly? And also, whatever you estimate, cut it down. All of us, you know, we're going to get a little like, woohoo! Yeah, I'm going to sell 1 million copies. No, you're probably not. You're not Stephanie Meyer. It ain't going to happen, okay? And once again, it's getting eaten by a shark on land. It could happen. You probably won't budget accordingly. Those stuff that, like, once again, when you quit the day job, insurance. You have to buy your own insurance. That is not as insurmountable as people make it out to be. For years, I always heard writers who were like, I can't quit my day job because the health insurance costs are too high. No, not really. And a lot of times when people tell me that, they haven't actually shopped it. So go and shop it and talk to some insurance people, and you might be surprised. It oftentimes is more affordable than you give it credit for. Other things like budgeting your marketing expenses, the time that you spend as a writer. One of the things is when you are writing full-time, you will have more time for marketing purposes. Now, marketing is a whole different panel, but find what you're good at and do that, and don't do the stuff you suck at. Okay? That's anti-marketing. Don't do that.
Are we still not loud enough?
Well, oh, now I can hear you, thank you. And, so I was just at a panel and, one of the women there, she said that they do 20% of their costs or their income that they put towards marketing. Do you have a set number or
No.
just go?
Just go. It depends on what you're good at. It depends on what I've seen people spend a lot of money on marketing for no results. I've seen people spend zero money on marketing for fantastic results. It depends entirely upon you and your personality and what your methods are and what works and doesn't work for you. Some of us, I've seen guys drop big money on ads, like online ads. I've seen people do radio campaign ads and be utter miserable failures and get nothing out of it. My publishing house used to like to have me do radio interviews where they would actually hire a publicist and then they would arrange me to do a bunch of radio interviews. I asked them to stop wasting money on that. I never ever ran into anybody at a book signing or in the world that said, I bought your books because I heard you on morning AM drive time funny talk radio. Never. Not in my entire career, never. But I can dink around on Facebook and have 12,000 people say, ha ha, that's funny, and go buy a book. You see what I'm saying? So it depends on you and your personality.
There's a,
Yeah, balance, go ahead.
you'll hear this word a lot, platform. People talk about platform. Basically, it's you bringing your audience with you to your fiction career. Some people have platforms because of their job. Some people have platforms because of something else that they happen to do that's interesting. For me, one of the things that helped me, and this was not necessarily deliberate, but it did help, was the short fiction that I was doing. Initially, I did it because I had a very old-fashioned picture in my mind of how you break in to traditional publishing. This is like 10, 12 years ago when that's all there was. E-publishing, indie publishing kind of didn't exist in real time yet. It was picking up, but it wasn't there yet. So I had a very traditional idea of how to go about this. I submitted, short stories to the magazines and contests like Writers of the Future, etc. And I broke in that way, and I actually did pretty well. Some things got nominated. I started to kind of make a name for myself. How that helped me from a pure business standpoint is when it came time to publish an actual novel with Bain, I had an audience that was coming in behind me. I had a platform. The first Bain book that came out, you have a thing, he talked about advances. Your book has to earn that advance back before you start seeing what are called royalties. And the royalties, as Larry noted, are what's really going to make you independent, and you're going to be able to quit your day job. So because I had my platform, though, my book earned out very, very quickly. But I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't done the short stories first. So consider when you're approaching your business plan, what kind of platform might you already have? Another thing Larry also had that was part of his platform when he started was he had a very big footprint in the firearms community. Firearms expert, the guy...
I've known some of these guys for 20 years that way.
I can say this as a military person. Larry has more small arms experience than the training cadres of some small countries.
Well, that's on them, not me.
But because he was a had a platform. So, consider that. And if you don't have one, there are ways to build one.
It's actually kind of funny because there's like 6 guys I know that we were all from the same internet gun forum like 20 years ago. That are published writers now. Yeah, we got 4 of us here. It's just, it was a very literate bunch of gun guys.
So I'm going to touch on some, I'm going to ask you guys to address this because, he has, okay, get a plan, quit your job, work 40 hours a week, doing your work. There's the big one. When you don't have a boss standing over you, discipline.
Huge.
Discipline is a thing.
Huge.
It's huge. And the question is, how do the 2 of you approach that? I know how I do it every day because my boss is a bitch. I don't let myself not work because it's all on me. I'm 2 years out on my shows. I'm booked 2 years out. And that's how I know I'm okay because I'm constantly looking for what that next job is that comes in after that. So how do you guys approach your discipline as writers?
I'm kind of a workaholic. And my wife is here, she's nodding.
Let's let him go first.
Oh.
He hasn't talked recently, his turn.
Oh,
So,
I'm good. I was going to say, I have discipline? That was all I was going to say.
no, you can talk to those things because they understand.
Okay, so strategies I'm using as someone who is,
Because you're doing both.
I am, this is a work in progress for me. I have to, again, get with my business partner, my spouse, and we agree, okay, these are your hours. These are your office hours during which you will disengage from the family and you will go to your little home office and you will sit your ass in that chair and you will make money for this family. He's laughing because he knows my wife.
you will
is so
earn.
rigid.
I know Andy. I know if anybody knows the Torgersens, Andy's the tough one.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So my boss honestly kind of is my business partner. My business partner doesn't give, I'm going to say this, does not give a shit about the art side of it. She does care about the checks. And that is a huge help because if you're like me and you are engaged with many things at once and you're naturally distractible and it's easy to go in 10 different directions and not finish things, it is enormously helpful to have that business partner saying, okay, did you take care of business? It's time to go right. Dude, you need to go take care of stuff. If you can have that in your household, that is a huge advantage. Other things I think are, again, you're here obviously at the convention. I know for me when I was just starting out, just sitting where you guys are sitting was like electricity because it really helped me lock in on, yeah, this is what I want to do. Ways that you can remind yourself of that, like shoot, sometimes I'll just go and stroll around in a bookstore and I'll see people like Lee Modesett. If you get a chance on Saturday, Lee Modesett Jr., excellent example. He never quit his day job. You go to Barnes & Noble, he has a whole frickin' shelf of his books.
And they're amazing.
And they're really good. But again, production. He has figured it out. He has mastered the ability to make sure his butt's in that chair X number of hours every day, every week. I would even say put yourself on a time card. I know I do that. I put myself on a little Excel spreadsheet and I track my time. Because I'm trying to do exactly what Larry suggested to me years ago. He said, dude, figure it out. How much are you making per hour? And when you finally reach the point where the writing is paying you more per hour than the civilian job, then you know you've got a good chance of going full-time.
I would say I'm kind of workaholic, and so I like to work. I get hyper-focused, and I have to kind of force myself to take time off. My wife's laughing because we've often had where like I'll leave the church, or I'll leave the house to go to church on Sunday. And then it'll be next Sunday, and my wife's like, you realize you haven't left the house since we went to church last night. I'm like, oh, huh. And sometimes, like, when I'm coming up on a deadline, I'm just kind of a jackass. And so I apologize. I love you guys, but they put up with a lot of crap. But here's the thing. The main thing it comes down to is professionalism. It's your job, treat it as such. So, and we're all different, and I'm not going to say you have to work like I work or work like Brad works. Those are just suggestions, but really think about how are you productive and then maximize that productivity. You might be a morning writer, you might be an evening writer, you might be a weekend binge writer, but whatever that is, find what works for you and then use that to maximize your production. It's not like a job. It's really weird because like when you have a day job, you get that thing where you get in front of the computer and you kind of like dink around on Facebook and you're worried your boss is going to come by and see you yell at you. Here's the thing about writing. I can dink around all I want, but the only person I'm screwing is myself here because I'm the one that ain't going to get paid. But at the same time, also, I know my work habits, so I give myself time to screw around because that refreshes my brain. So I might write for a couple hours and be all charged up, but then I just need a break and I'll go wander off and do whatever. I always make a joke that writer's block is a filthy lie. And I say that because here's the thing, when you have writer's block, there's nothing mystical about it. It's actually just that you want to do something else. It's that you're bored, or you're stuck, or you're lazy, or you want to go play Call of Duty. That's fun. But just be honest with yourself and don't give it any mystical muse powers, okay? Because like as an accountant, I couldn't have a accounting block. They would fire me, okay? I don't feel like doing spreadsheets today. My heart just isn't in these spreadsheets. And the Air Force would have said, fire me, okay? And so the thing is, you gotta look at this as a job and then work accordingly.
So, practical considerations?
Oh, like nuts and
Business. Yes, nuts and
Okay. You mind if I joke? Okay.
You go right ahead.
As a former accountant, this drives me nuts. I know so many authors, and this is truly awful. I know a lot of authors, actually, that they begin their writing career, and then 5 or 6 years later, they're working for the IRS. And what I mean is that they fail to pay their taxes. A lot of people come from a background, they're not small businessmen, and so they're used to, like, you get money, and your employer's already taking money out of your check for you. That no longer happens. When you receive money, you are your employer. That means you need to pay the taxes on it. And not only that, Social Security and Medicare, a lot of people don't realize, they see the 8-9% that comes out of their check. They don't realize that your employer pays a corresponding amount of that. Really, you have 16% come out of your check. So you need to pay that. And if you don't, the IRS loves to audit authors. It's one of those careers that when you write it down, auditors like, oh, this guy's going to be one of those artistic weenies. We're going to be able to rake this guy over the coals. Plus, a lot of authors think that they can deduct anything. Like, I bought this sports car, and it's a writing expense, a work expense. The auditors eat you. The auditors are evil, soulless beasts. I say that. I'm a former auditor. We don't care. We like catching people screwing up and saying, I own you. Okay, so seriously, their souls are surgically removed from their CPA. I mean, I'm not even a CPA. It's evil. Okay, so pay your taxes. Now, once you get to where you're making about, say, $20,000, $30,000 a year off writing, and this is when you get serious, go talk to a CPA about how to structure your business. And the CPA will be able to walk you through. Most of you guys are from Utah. You know, Utah tax laws are fairly straightforward. But a lot of you from all over the country. Go talk to a local CPA who does taxes in your area, because he'll be able to help you with your state and local taxes, and also how to structure your business. Now, like I said, $20,000, $30,000, that's like your cutoff for where you need to go from being a sole proprietor, just you on your Social Security number, to being some form of incorporation or LLC. And both have their pros and cons. The CPA will be able to walk you through that. Then structure your business. They will be able to help you set up all the information of how you take out your taxes and take care of all this stuff. That's their job.
Yeah, yeah, the other thing too also is retain a good lawyer. Lawyer matters. Contract law is not something that you want to get into by yourself. I have a wonderful lawyer that all of my contracts go through, because if you don't have it in writing, you can't sue them. So you don't ever want to do things like on handshakes. Get it in writing.
Have you
Always
had to play that card?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's an opera company that my lawyer had lovely conversations with to get payment out of them, and finally it was. Well, the costumes are on stage to look at a check, and we've seen the opera chorus, and that won't be pretty. So, so don't ever think that you want to just sign whatever contract without running it past somebody who knows the law. It really matters.
And you'll be paying for that too.
There are some bad contracts out there too,
Yes.
especially amongst small presses.
Yes.
There's a few that are in Utah that are legend, to the point that, like, I'm not joking, like my wife and I, we were in London one time, and a big British, with the president and his wife, or wife, her husband, of a big British publishing house, and they said, yeah, Utah, man, what is up with that place? There are some like predatory contracts that come out of like small presses there. So London, England, small presses from here were legendary for how bad they were. They will molest you, and they will take your firstborn child.
Yeah, don't be so desperate to get into print that you'll just say, I'll sign anything.
Yeah.
Don't do it. really, that is, I think that's a really important one. And there's lots of literature to explain how to read a contract. If you're like, man, I just can't do a lawyer right now, or whatever, try to educate yourself on the clauses that are going to be there, on the language. And of course, you're already here talking to probably the best resource of all, because you have access to guys like Larry and all the other professionals who have been doing it for a long time.
There's a bunch of authors here who've signed a bunch of contracts, but you'll see some things like the little stuff that you don't think about when you're starting out. Other rights beyond print. What are you signing away? The big ones on that are like dramatic rights, audio, movies, TV, audiobook rights, game rights. I've made a ton of money over the years off of game rights. Audiobook, I make 1/3 of my income off of audio. Well, 1/4 to 1/3 of my income off of audiobooks. Okay? So if you have the way to develop these things, make sure you hold on to them. Foreign translation rights. Now, I actually sold my foreign translation rights to Bain because Bain has an active program and agents of selling rights overseas. So it actually behooved me to sell it to Bain because I made more money that way because they got into more markets than I could on my own.
You've done well.
I've done really good foreign, but here's the thing about foreign. If you have the ability to develop this on your own, you get to keep all that money. A lot of times if you have an agent, I'm not agented. Some people are agented, some people are not. Once again, that's a business thing. That's a decision you make. Agents take 15% of everything you make. That's how they make their money. It behooves them to sell your stuff because that's how they get paid. But some agents suck. It's like any other career. If you have the ability to do contracts yourself, and you have the ability to sell yourself, then you don't need an agent, because then I make 15% more than another author that sells like I do because I don't have one. But it depends on, do you have the ability to get your stuff into those markets?
Okay, so that's kind of a general overview of things.
Oh yeah, there's a million
There's
things we
so
can talk about.
much
We're just
more.
cramming this in.
Yeah, it's just like this could be a 3-hour panel really easily. So what I'm going to do is open it up to questions, more specifics, and I'll work my way across the room and back. Okay, so I'm going to start over there and work my way that way, but put your hands up.
Yeah, we'll try to rapid fire these.
Yeah, because and also don't look for follow-up questions because there's a lot here. So we've only got about 12 minutes to go. So we'll start over here.
This may be really specific, but it's fast. But you mentioned shopping around for healthcare. Where do you recommend to start?
I ended up just calling every healthcare company. I live in Oregon, so I have a different perspective. I don't have what you have here in Oregon. It's terrible. So I just every year I'm doing shopping. I'm just checking with which one, and it's part of my monthly budget of what I pay. And I actually have a pretty good program.
And there are professional insurance people.
Yeah.
That's their job, is to
Focus
sell
on-
you insurance policies.
Yeah, for small proprietor businesses, there's people that do that. So Peter,
And they
what you
compete
got
too. So.
I'd just like to say from my own experience, if you're going to quit your day job, have some reserves to keep you going for 6 months to a year. If you've got nothing, don't quit. Have reserve.
Total agreement. In fact, when I talk about living paycheck to paycheck, before I quit my day job, one of the things we agreed to was I had to have X number of dollars in the bank before we could leave. That was how much we needed to live off of for 1 year.
Okay. You're next.
Me?
Yes.
Book specifically, what is the downside of getting a book, even if it's agented through a publisher, that is not your best work, but it's your first work? You've been you've written 7 books, you get one finally, it hits, and you're like, wow, that's not the best one. Should I hold off and wait?
I would still sell it. I would still sell it because my first book is not my best book either. Because I got better. I got 10 years of practice. It's like any other career, you're going to get better as you go. But the most important thing is you get paid. So get it out there and you start building a name. People expect you to get better over time. The only reason I wouldn't leave something out is if it really, really, really was garbage. And it would hurt my brand. But other than that, put that sucker out there.
You're next.
Typical cost of lawyer and
Typical cost of lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Depends on where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get what you pay for, but honestly, CPAs aren't that expensive. Best thing to do is talk to other local businessmen and see who they recommend. I went with a CPA that had audited my military contract company.
I work specifically with a lawyer that works with artistic people. So you can look for somebody who does that or works with other authors. That's a way to go. I also work with a CPA that works with arts organizations in my town. So
Price, all over.
yeah, it just depends. So okay, so I've got a guy behind you, then I'll keep working my way across. So you're next.
Yeah. You mentioned that you don't, Larry, you said you don't use a
agent, how would you go about skipping an agent and still get published?
Well, the only thing an agent really does is they are the people that represent your work and put the product in front of the people who are capable of buying it. So if you have a way to circumvent them by dealing with those people directly, like if you're indie, why bother? Just you're selling directly to your customer. But like if you have a relationship with a publisher that you can circumvent that, that's fine. However, some publishing houses only accept agented submissions. Because really the agents in that case serve as the first line of defense against the thousands of pieces of crap that are submitted to you. But if you have a way, like I have like 6 guys I think in Utah that are published at Bain because I introduced them to Tony Weisskopf. Because she was out here and I was like, I like this guy. He works hard and I like his stuff.
So you're getting 15%, right?
I wish I'm enough for a capitalist, I'll keep this.
And then you'll be next. Okay, so there. Okay, you're up. Go.
So, true or false? You do need a business license to publish your first book.
No.
So it's only when you get into $20,000 to $30,000 range.
Business license is just, no, when I say 2030, it's like that's really kind of the cutoff of when it's worth it for taxation purposes to switch from being a sole proprietor, where you just are doing business on your social security number, to switching to either some form of business incorporation, like an S corp or an LLC.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by that. Business license is between you and, like I have a business license because I have a home office and my county, Morgan County requires me to.
Yeah.
And it's just an excuse for them to take $40 from me every year.
Yeah, I hit LLC, and it makes it easier for me in terms of being able to deal with anybody trying to sue me for a costume not being right. It just makes it easier. So I think that's my hand. You were next. Yes.
So I'm here attending a conference with my son who's 14 and wants to be an author someday. I'm coming from a background of being self-employed for 20 years as well. From a business standpoint as well as a creative standpoint, what do you wish you had known when you were a teenager that would have propelled your career earlier?
Okay, so I was 18 years old when I got it into my head that I wanted to do this. I had an opportunity at 18 years old to do scripting for a little homespun, it was on the radio for KRCL-FM down in Salt Lake City, basically a science fiction serial. And it was doing that while reading my hero, Larry Niven. I thought, he makes good money doing this. I wonder how much harder I would have to work to go from being homespun little radio guy to published, guy doing books. Here's what I didn't realize at the time. A big part of my problem, I think, was I was still too immature as a person. I firmly believe that every author advances at a different rate, and your ability to translate onto the page, sometimes you just have to grow and take a few hard knocks as a person. I meet so many young authors that are like, yeah, I want to be, who's the Aragon guy? They want to be him. And I try to stress, you know what, you probably won't be. You're probably going to have to give yourself time to grow and do some things in the world and maybe take some hard knocks.
Learn your craft.
And learn your craft. That's the other part of it.
Learn your craft.
The general rule, the 10,000 hour rule that you've heard about in other arenas still applies. Your first stuff is probably not going to be that good. Your stuff at 500,000 words is probably not going to be that good. I myself didn't break in until I'd already done about 850,000 words. That's like 8.5 books worth of material, almost all of which was just not up to snuff. So try to preach patience. Try to preach it's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay. That is normal.
I got another addition to that too. For young people who are really interested in being writers, I would say do not get an English degree.
Yes.
And here's why this is controversial. Yes. Well, here's why. Like Brett said, it takes a while to build the skills to become a professional storyteller, and those are not necessarily skills you learn in college. And English doesn't necessarily teach you those skills either. I was an accountant. So the thing is, have a job that you can make a living at while you develop those skills to be a professional writer. My daughter's sitting right behind you. She's now sold 2 professional stories. However, she's going off to college. She's 17. She's going off to college and getting a computer science degree. Okay, because that way she can live in a house and pay bills.
And eat food.
And eat food.
Not here.
Oh, center section questions there.
So, Larry, you don't have an agent. Do you have a lawyer go vet those, or do you just know your contracts?
I was a contract accountant, so part of my job was doing contracts. Only mine was with like fighter jets, so I wasn't really worried about. Though I have actually at times called in experts on different specific topics, like I don't know much about movies. And when I first started doing game stuff, I didn't know much about games. And so I would bring in outside experts. Sometimes lawyers, not necessarily always, just depends on what the topic is.
Okay, over, and there was somebody else over here. You were next. Then there was another person over here.
You don't have to answer this if it's not like kosher, but what are the presses that you would warn against for Utah?
Ooh. I don't even know if they're still around.
I don't think they are.
The
two that I'm thinking about are gone.
I don't like getting sued.
Check
But-
the Predators and Editors site.
Yes.
Predators and Editors
Site.
Great
Yeah.
site that keeps up to date on who are good small presses, who are really not so awesome small presses to work with, and who's got great editing, who are
Yes.
editors you do not want to work with.
She knows what we can
Google
speak.
Predators and Editors. It's kind of funny
Yes.
spelling, and that will get you a lot.
Like in front of a panel of 200 people, I'm not going to just like slander somebody. But like when you get a contract offer for someone, ask around about them, and you'll
Yeah.
find out rather quickly what their reputation is.
Yeah, so I think they had one more over. There was one over here somewhere. You were there. It was like one of the two of you. We're down
In
to
order
like 3 minutes.
to learn more about the business side, the marketing side, are there any resources for learning that you would recommend going to?
I got a self-plug here. I've written a whole bunch of writing essays on my blog, and they're mostly business related. I'm not an artistic kind of guy, so they're mostly nuts and bolts.
Really, any small business education program that exists will help you. And learn bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Learn bookkeeping and learn what's deductible and what's not. Pay attention to those details. It matters. It can eat you alive if you let your expenses get away from you.
But it's monsterhunternation.com.
Yeah.
Go to the best of tab, ask Correia. And it's because after LTUE, things like this, people always email me questions, and I can't answer anything short, so they'll turn into like 10,000 word business essays.
Next, and then I'll go back up here.
I'm gonna say, so I feel like I hear about breaking in a whole lot, but sometimes that's kept kind of big, and I can imagine like an infinite number of steps of success in writing. Like Brad, when you said breaking, is that like Writers of the Future for you?
Correct. Larry has a beautiful article on his blog. What's the A to Z of?
Oh, the alphabetical list of the official alphabetical list of author success.
Yes.
I wrote it as a joke because all my critics keep calling me a D-list author. And so what I actually did is I took the authors that make the most money, pegged myself at D, and then I used stats from The Guardian, which is a newspaper that hates me, to get what they said the median was. And then I did an A to Z list of how much money you make at each stage of your career.
It's great. Go read it.
It was done silly, yet over the last 5 or 4 years since I've seen a lot of people actually using this. They say, I'm a F-list author. I'm a G-list author. Because it actually does work.
Yes.
It's the scary thing.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Sorry, one last question over there. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just a quick question for Larry. What game are you referring to when you say that your books are like...
I've done 2 versions of the Monster Hunter International universe as a role-playing game for 2 different systems. I did at one point have a video game thing in development, but can't talk about that because it never really came to fruition, but I got NDAs. And then I have another one that I'm under NDA. I just signed a contract for tabletop, let me put it that way, and which is actually really cool, from actually a really big company.
Hey, you're up here.
When it comes to contracts, are there any like red flags that you would get?
Biggest red flag? I can think of off the top of my head. In fact, one of the ones I've seen is evil, and I know some authors that run into this. It's anything where you give away like the rights, and also there'll be like a right to first refusal for future products, but they'll have a clause in there about anything that's a competing product. So like you'll write a book and you'll sell it to the small press publisher, and they'll say, thank you very much, but we have this clause that says we get to see anything else you write, and we get right of first refusal But if it's a competing product, they can make it so you can't sell it to anyone else. And if you think about that, that's really evil.
Yeah.
And there's actually, I know a few authors in Utah who write under a pen name specifically because they ran into that, where they couldn't write another book that was even vaguely in the same genre without violating their previous contract.
So we need to wrap up. Any final statements?
Again, I said this in a panel much earlier today. This whole business, and it is a business, it's the attrition rule. Most people, in fact, maybe the vast majority of people who say they want to do this, who maybe even apply themselves to it, end up quitting. Really, the difference between sitting where you are and sitting here is just being stubborn and not quitting. That's honest to goodness, that's all it is.
Discipline.
Last year I did the speech for LTUE. I was the, whatever they call that, the talker guy. And I make my living with words. And, but what I talked about was what I've seen over 10 years of LTUE, because I've seen them doing this. I started as a noob, but now I'm doing pretty good. And I've also at the same time seen people go, I've seen the arcs of their careers. I've seen them go from brand noobs till it's very successful. I've seen them go from successful to not successful. And the main thing I saw was consistent professionalism in production. So that's the key to success.
And we're done.